Every year, the 49ers cut players, and it typically happens between now and the start of free agency, or maybe between now and April 1st, because the 49ers commonly put a contractual trigger date in on April 1st, and that advantages them for free agency, which begins about 3 weeks earlier in March. So, who's going to be cut, and what is the 49ers strategy entering these next few weeks? We lead off with some news that I have dug up, just looking around at 49ers contracts, because a lot of people wondering about the future of Bryce Huff. 49ers traded with the Philadelphia Eagles for the pass rusher. He started off hot, especially when Nick Bosa was also available, taking some attention away blocking wise. Then Bryce Huff went cold as far as the sack column went over the back half of the season, but he is still under contract for one more season with San Francisco. And it turns out that the 49ers, and by the way, this is the interview with Mayor Daniel Lurie, San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie, out earlier today. Go ahead and check that out. I definitely wanted to make sure to plug that because we had a great discussion about the 49ers earlier today. That is up on the channel. This is the only 49ers YouTube channel where you're going to get a sit down with the mayor of San Francisco. We might have talked a little bit about Candlestick Park and the site there, still to be developed. Make sure to go check that out in case you really care about the 49ers past and their future. Just a little bit of a hint there to go check out the Daniel Lurie interview. Anyway, that's up. You check that out. This right here is the Bryce Huff contract. And what you will notice if you're familiar with contracts is that the 49ers have restructured Bryce Huff's deal. Now, they have not given this a hard restructure. And by that, I mean they have not converted base salary into an option bonus that they have paid out already. But they have the option of enjoying this proration if Bryce Huff remains on the team after the start of this 2026 season. So what I mean by that is that I'm going to step back and I'm going to explain this. Somebody walked up to me the other day in Aquatic Park. I just gotten out of the water, and he said he was a longtime viewer, but he said some of this complex contractual and graph stuff, he wants me to explain it a little bit more in detail so that he can, because he just joined the channel a few months ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to step back and explain this in a little bit more detail, a little bit more slowly, so the 49ers can understand the strategy at play. So Bryce Huff, when the 49ers traded for him, had 2 seasons left on his contract, 2025 and 2026. He played 2025 with the Eagles paying over half of his base salary, which you see right here. $7.95 million was the 49ers, what they owed. The Eagles paid something like $9 million for Bryce Huff. Now, as we move to the final season of Bryce's contract, the 49ers are responsible for everything, but it is not guaranteed. There's nothing guaranteed about the 2026 money in Bryce Huff's contract. San Francisco has made it such that the vast majority of what is scheduled to come to Bryce Huff, and that is $14.635 million, will hit as part of an option bonus that the 49ers must decide to exercise by the start of the 2026 regular season. So the 49ers have until between now until when they kick off against the Rams in Melbourne, Australia, to decide whether or not to take on Bryce Huff's $14.635 million option bonus. And if they do take it on, they have split out the salary cap hits over 5 years. They've prorated them. Do you guys see this column right here? $2.97 million. If you divide 14.635 divided by 5, that is $2.927 million. Like an accordion, they have stretched the cap hits out to 2030 so that they face less of a cap hit this year. That is allowable by NFL rule, and that is smart on the 49ers' part, because the salary cap has consistently increased year over year. So you'd rather push the hits out into the future when the salary cap will theoretically and almost certainly be greater. But what is happening here with Bryce Huff is that this is not guaranteed. None of this is guaranteed. This will only be stretched out into the future if Bryce Huff is on this team beyond week 1 or at week 1. They must exercise this option bonus by week 1. You see the 49ers frequently do this. They're going to slash base salary to the veteran minimum. In this case, it's $1.2 million. The rest turns into option bonus. The one piece of guaranteed money here for Bryce Huff is a $1 million roster bonus, which is due on March 13th. So if Bryce is still on this roster in a month, then he will be owed $1 million for the 49ers. But he's not going to be owed the rest of that $14 million until week 1 of this season. What does that mean? Well, it gives Raheem Morris and the 49ers flexibility. That's their new defensive coordinator. We know that Huff was a Saleh guy. The 49ers traded for him after they picked up Robert Saleh. We know that he's going to be a 4-3 rusher at home for the rest of his career. That's where Bryce Huff has succeeded with the New York Jets. He didn't succeed once the Philadelphia Eagles in a Fangio system were using something different. And then I thought that he saw quite a bit of success with the 49ers early when they actually had personnel. So it makes for a complicated evaluation moving forward. So then we talk about, okay, what is Raheem Morris going to run? Chris Kasarik is still on the staff. So is it going to be a standard four down front? Is he going to bring back what he was doing earlier in his career in Tampa Bay with the 49ers? It's probably going to be a good dosage of that. And if that is the case, then the 49ers will, I think, find a way to try to keep Bryce Huff around. They have him under contract for 2026. Now, they may ask him to take a pay cut because where he's at right now, look at it, the compensation right now for the 2026 season. It's that $1.2 million base salary plus the $14.6 million option bonus, which they would owe him if he does stay on the team. So that's something like $16 million plus the roster bonus, $17 million, about $17.5 million for Bryce Huff this season. That's not elite edge rusher play, but it's fairly lucrative edge rusher money. A guy that only had 4 sacks last year, albeit in a situation that went awry around him, I don't know if you're going to want to pay $17 million this year. Somebody like Samson Ebukam, for example, somebody who fit the 49ers system really well back in 2021 and 2022. He was an $8 million player this past year. Joey Bosa. There's a lot of rumors about Joey Bosa potentially coming to the 49ers. They went after him last year, but they were unwilling to offer as much as the Buffalo Bills. Joey Bosa was a $12 million player last year. He wasn't a $17 million player. And I think that if Bryce Huff is on this football team, the 49ers might try to finagle their way into paying him a little bit less than what he's currently scheduled to make. And that's the leverage that the 49ers have in this situation. Huff is under contract, but Huff also is due that option bonus in week 1, and none of that is guaranteed. So San Francisco can say, hey, we want you to play for a little bit less money. He could say no and cut me and test his market. But what the 49ers will do over the course of the next several weeks with all of their players is they're going to be talking to agents around the league. They're going to be gauging the value of their players, the guys who are still under contract, and especially the guys whose money is not guaranteed. They're going to make sure that what they pay is efficient. And that's why you see guys cut at this time of the year. For example, Eric Armstead, the 49ers released him in 2024. I think that he was scheduled to make something like $18 million, $17 or $18 million. And the 49ers, for them, cost efficiency, given Eric Armstead's role, would have been something like probably $10 million. That's what we said at the time. I think they offered Eric $6 million. They probably would have upped that and bid all the way up to 10. But Eric said, no, I'm out, because Jacksonville was willing to give him 14. But the pre-existing price of 17 or 18 million for Eric Armstead was too high. The 49ers were unwilling to pay it because you've got to stay salary cap sustainable. So they decided to cut Eric Armstead when they couldn't come to a pay cut resolution, and that was history. Maybe this Bryce Huff situation goes down the same path, and the 49ers end up jettisoning him, and he heads over to the Tennessee Titans, or he's traded to Tennessee, and they work out some kind of pay split. But none of it's guaranteed in this season, so the 49ers do have a lot of flexibility. But you could see this ending up in any number of different directions. It's just important to understand the contract in this case, and it's important to understand that the 49ers have built in some flexibility for themselves with this restructure, but it is not a hard and fast guaranteed restructure because the option bonus money that spreads out like that accordion over the course of the next 5 years is not due to Bryce Huff until week 1 of this season. All right, let's talk about some of the other names on this list. As Mike just mentioned in a text message to me, the combine is when value is determined. Yes, and that's coming up here in less than 2 weeks. So I'll be in Indianapolis. I too talk with people. I talk with agents. I'll talk with executives around the league. And I think that all the people in one spot at the NFL Combine, everybody assumes that this is, guys talking about the draft prospects and guys looking at the measurements and doing all the medical evaluations of the rookies coming into the league set to be picked at the end of April. That's a massive part of the combine. But I think that just as important is the fact that you've got all the GMs and all the coaches, or not all of them. I know Kyle Shanahan doesn't go anymore, but you got a lot of the decision makers in one spot, and they could start to probe and gauge value, market rate for some of these players. And then you'll see the inefficiencies corrected. Right. And the 49ers have been in a spot of correcting inefficiencies, just like any good franchise over the course of the Lynch Shanahan regime. Last year, they ran a roster reset. So you saw a lot of these cuts happen for the 49ers. In fact, I've got the full list here. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, he was waived on February 18th. So that was even before the NFL Combine. That was a move that the 49ers had already predetermined entering the offseason. But after the Combine, right at the start of free agency, remember, they ran an efficiency reset on Kyle Juszczyk's contract. They released him, and then he re-signed with them a few days later, but the deal was a lower amount than what he had previously been owed. Javon Hargrave, released by the 49ers. Malik Collins, released. Leonard Floyd, released by San Francisco. They even let go of the long snapper, Tabor Pepper, last year. So that was rather dramatic for the 49ers at the beginning of 2025 free agency. Not sure that they're going to be undergoing as much house cleaning this season, but we can expect them to run a few cuts. And definitely people are going to be looking at the Bryce Huff contract as one that may not be particularly efficient for the 49ers. But with the team control, there could be several different avenues that they take moving forward. Now, one of the big fish names is Brandon AIyuk. Now, AIyuk this is obviously a singular case. This is a unique case. This is something that I don't think we've ever seen before in NFL history. The 49ers have certainly never seen this. The guy signs a monster deal. His agent, Ryan Williams, negotiates a great contract for Brandon AIyuk that included a ton of injury guaranteed money, $30 million per year when you looked at just the simple APY. All Brandon AIyuk had to do after tearing his ACL to cash out big time with the 49ers was put in a minimum amount of effort. He just had to show up. He just had to show up, go through his rehab, be there on time to continue collecting massive paychecks for the 49ers because essentially his first 3 years were guaranteed. Probably could have been around 3 years, $90 million for Brandon AIyuk, even after tearing his ACL in what was it, week 6, I think, of week 7 of the 2024 season. However, AIyuk did not do that. He stopped showing up. And when he stopped showing up, well, actually, that was down the road. Before he did something that violated the terms of the deal earlier, the 49ers voided those guarantees, and then he stopped showing up altogether. So he made a bad situation even worse. Nobody's exactly sure what Brandon AIyuk is thinking, even inside the 49ers building. But by not showing up, by disappearing from the team facility and only appearing on a YouTube post when he was speeding by Levi's Stadium, the money was previously owed to him, that was guaranteed to him in the future, is no longer in that category. In fact, the 49ers don't have to pay him at all as long as he's on the did not report list, or left squad list, I guess is the exact list that he's on. So at this point, the 49ers hold contractual control over Brandon AIyuk, but they don't owe him any more money. Like all the salary cap damage that had been done with Brandon AIyuk's contract, is in the rear view mirror. Now, the 49ers may even be able to salvage some of that money, or at least the salary cap space, because of breach of contract, and we'll see how far they take this. I'm sure that there are going to be lawyers involved in all of this because it is such an unusual situation. But it is mind-blowing to see where the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk are now, given the fact that they signed a mega deal worth, what, up to $120 million in 2024. I could take Brandon Aiyuk's contract and put it up here on the screen to give you an idea of how the 49ers might proceed. Now, this is anybody's guess because we're really, really swimming into uncharted waters right now. But this is the Aiyuk deal. And you could see that the 49ers have team control all the way through 2028. That's a long, long time away. A lot of people seem to think that the 49ers will just cut Brandon Aiyuk. They'll just be done with it. They're going to cut him. They've already said that he's not going to play for them again. But they haven't explicitly said that they would just do that and cut him. Because if you do cut Brandon Aiyuk, you will face some significant salary cap penalties accelerating into 2025. Because what happens here, they structured Brandon Aiyuk's contract just like the one that I showed you up on the screen here a few minutes ago with Bryce Huff, except it's that on steroids because you've got a lot more money in this contract. But it is filled with signing and option bonuses that are prorated into future years. So money that was promised to Brandon Aiyuk, stretched out into the future. Obviously, he's not going to be making the option bonuses, and the 49ers are going to be able to, I think, recoup some of this season's option bonus. And obviously, he's not going to be making next season's option bonus since he stopped showing up. But some money has already been paid out in the form of a 2025 signing bonus and the 2026 option bonus. And that money has been stiff-armed and pushed into the future, prorated into the future by rule to allow the 49ers to keep the salary cap hit in 2025 and 2026 lower. Aiyuk only had a $9.9 million cap hit on a contract worth $30 million annually in 2024, and the hit only increased to $14.6 million in 2025. If they do cut him, the money that has been pushed into the future that's already been paid, but has been pushed into the future as far as the salary cap hit goes, would all flood back and hit the cap now. And I don't think the 49ers want that because the best way to cap sustainability is to surf the wave and keep that money pushed into the future. So simply cutting Brandon Aiyuk would come with some short-term financial consequences. Now, maybe the 49ers are willing to just swallow those short-term consequences. That's entirely possible. But maybe since there is no real downside to just keeping Brandon Aiyuk on the left squad list, he's not a distraction anymore because he's not even in the building. Maybe the 49ers are just going to sit on this. Again, this is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this happen before. So I am just going through all of the options. And if the 49ers want to make a statement here, if they want to make sure that this doesn't become precedent, if they're worried that Brandon Aiyuk, if cut, would try to sign for the veteran minimum with another team, and they don't want that to happen, they don't want to allow a player to basically lead them around like, just a bull ring, just drag them around. If they don't want a player to do that to them and get out of a lucrative contract. Obviously, this screwed the 49ers over last year because they were missing a separating wide receiver and they were missing a good perimeter run blocker. They can just sit on this. They don't have to do anything. I don't think this is a tradable contract. No team is going to want to inherit a massive option bonus. There's like a $25 million option bonus that must be exercised by the start of this season. I don't think any team is going to want to just absorb that right now. But if Aiyuk doesn't show up, then the 49ers don't owe that money, and they can just kind of make him rot. They could keep him in this purgatory where he can't sign with anybody else. Now, things would become interesting if Aiyuk, because the 49ers do this, and I'm just speculating now as to their options. If the 49ers do decide to do that, Aiyuk could theoretically show up and force the 49ers' hand. Then all of a sudden things get a lot more complicated, right? But there's been no indication that he would do that. Nobody really knows what the hell is going on in this situation. So stay tuned. The bottom line here is that it was terrible news for the 49ers when AIyuk decided to quit on the team for whatever reason. It hurt them big time in the 2025 season on the field, but it was great news for the 49ers when after that, Brandon AIyuk decided that he wasn't even going to fight the voiding of guarantees moving into 2026 and beyond. That he wasn't even going to fight the 49ers saying, well, okay, we'll just crumple this contract up and throw it into the trash. A lot of times you would see a situation like this get really hairy and would have to go, essentially in front of a judge. There'd be arbitrators and there'd be lawyers and there'd be agents arguing about the nitty gritty. But Brandon AIyuk has just sat back and taken it. He just said, fine, take away my guarantees, take away my money. Nobody really knows why on the outside, but it has happened. So even though the 49ers suffered this terrible break, and it definitely hurt their football team because they were missing exactly what Brandon AIyuk brings to the table. I mean, I even made an X post about this, so we should put this here. Even though this particularly has hurt the 49ers on the field, they do have the saving grace of AIyuk shockingly walking away from the money and walking away from all arguments for the money, so that the 49ers should be able to recoup enough money in salary cap space this season to pick up the slack that AIyuk has left behind. But you could see here, and I posted this on X, the 49ers had two fatal shortcomings this past season. They had poor perimeter blocking in the run game. That was undeniable. I mean, they had a decent offensive line run blocking wise, but they were not good. And it's going to lead me to the tight end position next. They were not good blocking on the perimeter. And they had a lack of downfield separation in the pass game. And Brandon AIyuk was this team's best separator. I mean, he was an elite receiver in 2023. Both of those shortcomings, they ranked number 24 in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. Both of those shortcomings could be traced back to Brandon AIyuk not being there, not working to get back on the field for the 49ers, abandoning them. I mean, we talked about him as a potential hinge point down the stretch of this season if he could come back healthy. And because AIyuk couldn't do it or wouldn't do it, then we started talking about all pressure on Ricky Pearsall. But Ricky Pearsall had the PCL injury, and he wasn't 100% after week one. So it led to the horror show by the end of the season, especially after George Kittle went down against Philadelphia, where nobody could get open for the 49ers downfield. So slight tangent here, but it's related. How are the 49ers going to address the biggest shortcoming, which on the offensive side of the ball was that separation and blocking issue? They're going to have to add at wide receiver. They've got three paths to take. One is to make a massive splash and to trade for somebody like Justin Jefferson. That's obviously the biggest long shot, because are the Vikings even going to entertain trading Justin Jefferson? Maybe, maybe not. But I mean, that would obviously be something that generates a lot of subscribers for this channel, and we'll be way over 100,000 soon. We hit 100,000. Surprise party last night. Lombardi herself delivered, by the way. That was cool. Took me to left door, and all my friends were waiting there, and they had balloons that said 100K. It was really neat. So anyway, if the 49ers trade for Justin Jefferson, we'll be at 200K in no time. I think path two that I outline here is probably the most likely, and that is the 49ers making at least one mid-tier wide receiver signing and then using at least one draft pick on the wide receiver position. A mid-tier wide receiver to be somebody like Romeo Doubs. It'd be much more economically feasible, and also feasible from the perspective of you don't have to trade multiple first-round picks for Justin Jefferson. For somebody like Romeo Doubs, who can block, who can run, who can make contested catches. I think one of the more undervalued receivers potentially. That being said, undervalued receiver might be an oxymoron, because they might all be overvalued given the free agent market. Alec Pierce might make a lot more money than a team will be comfortable paying if they're looking for an efficient deal for a wide receiver. Same thing with Jawan Jennings. So maybe the 49ers are able to keep Jawan around at a discount, but I think that Jawan is going to try for more than $20 million this offseason. If that's the case, I highly doubt that he's going to be back with the 49ers next season. And if that's the case, then it might be tough to see Alec Pierce in a 49ers uniform. And it might be tough to see Romeo Doubs if the market gets that overinflated. I mean, good veteran wide receivers are tough to come by. So if you can find a second tier guy who helps your team, we can talk about Wan'Dale Robinson too. That might be somebody who's a little bit undervalued because he's not as big of a target. That is a small, I mean, what is Wan'Dale? 5'8", 5'9"? That could be somebody who doesn't make quite as much money, and it could be somebody who fits the mid-tier signing formula for the 49ers, which would have to be paired with a draft pick. Now, they can also dedicate multiple draft picks to the wide receiver position. Obviously, you're trying to develop players like Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing to take roles next year. That's immensely important because you can't just fill all the spots and improve as a football team through only player acquisitions. You also have to shepherd the guys who are already in the building to productivity. Mike said, watch cut candidates at wide receiver. He says the Darnell Mooney has an $18 million cap hit. He could be cut. By what? Is he still with the Bears? No, Darnell Mooney was with Atlanta this year, wasn't he? Darnell Mooney. So, I mean, if somebody like Darnell Mooney is available and there's a he was with Atlanta this past season. If there's a cost adjustment there, so the 49ers will be running their own cost adjustments, cutting some players, asking guys to take pay cuts. The guys who refuse might become available. Well, maybe somebody like Mooney at 28 years old would be a candidate for San Francisco. Robert Saleh's coaching staff is up. Did he take any 49ers coaches with him, Mike? I know you sent some to me. Looking over here. Looks like Tony Oden, who used to be with the 49ers, is going to be the pass game coordinator and the defensive or the cornerbacks coach for the Titans. Aaron White-Cotton, former 49ers assistant, is going to be the defensive line coach for Robert Saleh. Those are the only two names that I recognize on the defensive staff. On the offensive staff, looks like Saleh has completely moved away from the Shanahan tree. And, I mean, that was expected when he hired Brian Daboll to be his offensive coordinator. And he talked about that in his opening press conference. So no poachings from Kyle Shanahan on that front. Gus Bradley, obviously the defensive coordinator for Robert Saleh, with John Fossil being retained as the special teams coach. So no Brant Boyer to Tennessee. All right, we got to move it to Luke Farrell because we're talking about cut candidates. Farrell was the tight end whom the 49ers signed to a 3-year deal. And I don't think that they have gotten their return on investment yet with Luke Farrell. It was a 3-year deal worth about, I want to say about $5 million annually. I'm going to look at the exact contract right now on Over the Cap. It was, $5.25 million annually. 3 years, $15.75 million. Farrell is not much of a threat in the pass game. He had the touchdown against the New Orleans Saints with a nice move in week 2. But other than that, it wasn't very pretty in the pass game. And one area where the 49ers really did suffer in 2026 or 2025 was at the second tight end position, blocking wise. Jake Tonjes, when he filled in for George Kittle, a great receiver, but they lost a ton when George wasn't on the field, and that was a long stretch because of the hamstring, and then he tore his Achilles, and we'll see when George is back. I know he's aiming to be back as soon as possible, but can he make it back before Australia? The 49ers can certainly hope so. But when George was on the field, the 49ers had the number 8 or number 9 ranked rushing attack by EPA per rush, expected points added per rush, efficiency-wise. When George Kittle wasn't on the field, when he was unavailable to play, the 49ers ranked number 26 running the football. That's a massive, massive difference, and it shows you a couple things. Their receivers weren't great blocking, and their tight ends outside of George Kittle, even though they got a guy in Luke Farrell who they thought was going to be a really good run blocker for them, also wasn't great for this team in 2025. Now, can Farrell still play into the role? Maybe. Well, are the 49ers going to be patient enough to wait for this to happen? Well, remember that they paid out a considerable amount of money, $4.3 million to Luke Farrell on a signing bonus. In fact, I can show you his contract right now so you guys can see how this all works. We're going to open this up on the screen. I've got a A lot of windows open, but the Luke Farrell contract is going to be the newest one that we can study to see what the 49ers strategy might be. All right, here it is. Under contract through 2027, 49ers have spread this out into void years to make the cap hits as small as possible in the near term. So in 2026, you can see here, Luke Farrell's only owed a $1.35 million base salary. The second option bonus on Farrell's contract, which is the third column that prorates, I think, at $530,000 per year, is not due until August 25th. So they built this contract assuming that they might have a decision to make after year one. And it makes sense that they did this because Luke Farrell had played in a very different system in Jacksonville. So they were projecting the fit for Luke Farrell. They thought physically this guy could be really good in our system, but they were projecting the fit because they didn't actually have tape of it. And if they feel that, okay, we've seen him in our system for a year, we're not going to get our ROI here, they have until August 25th to make a decision, which also means they can make a post-June 1st cut and save $2.4 million of 2026 salary cap space. If you make a post-June 1st cut, the accelerations, all this money in these two columns that's pushed out into the future doesn't hit. The majority of it doesn't hit in 2026. You stave it off. You stiff arm it to 2027 and beyond. So the 49ers, because that option bonus in 2026 isn't due until August 25th, they will give themselves flexibility through free agency, through the NFL draft. And if they feel they can upgrade over Luke Farrell, they will not, according to this contract, have any trouble cutting him if they need to do that from a financial perspective this summer. August 25th would essentially be the deadline in that regard for Luke Farrell and the 49ers. Another one is Ji'Ayir Brown, the safety. This one's a lot more straightforward for Ji'Ayir. I've been, hammering on this for months now. The 49ers need better safety play. And I mean, Ji'Ayir lost his starting job for a while there, but then he reassumed it when the 49ers had a bunch of injuries, and then the rookie Marquise Siegel wasn't quite ready to play the ball last season. They're going to be counting on Marquise to make big strides in that regard. I think that the way that the safety position in this league has evolved, if you're not running a 4-3 or 4-4, you've got to be forcing takeaways. And it's been a long time since we've seen Ji'Ayir Brown force a takeaway. We had the Super Bowl and the interception against Patrick Mahomes. That might have been the high water mark of his career. It was a lot of downhill for the 49ers as a team ever since then. San Francisco, I think, really believes in Malik Mustafa and a continued recovery from the ACL tear that happened at the end of that 2024 season. This team is going to be operating with a new defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris, who might be re-emphasizing nickelback and safety coverage type of play because of some of the schemes that he's run in the past. He's a super adaptable guy, though, so it's really hard to guess exactly what he's going to do. I think the 49ers definitely do want Marquise Siegel with his instincts and his speed to develop better ball skills and emerge as one of their starting safeties moving forward. So, I mean, you look at all of, the forces at play, there's a chance that they're not going to want Ji'Ayir Brown on this team for $3+ million, which is what he's earning on the proven performance escalator in the final season of his contract. If that ends up being the case, then Ji'Ayir that's money the 49ers can save. It's not money that they owe him this year. It is not a guaranteed contract. He was not a first-round pick. Those are the guys who earned those guaranteed contracts. But again, they have time. The 49ers, this is just thanks to the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, which puts the ball into the team's courts here. The 49ers have time to make a decision all the way up until week 1 of this season, essentially. So they can keep Ji'Ayir around on the 90-man roster. Then it cuts down to 53. Then this team has to make a decision. He's scheduled to make between $3 and $4 million this season, final year of the rookie deal. I can almost guarantee you that San Francisco is going to be looking to press that upgrade button at safety over this offseason. But first, we have to see how they upgrade. How successful will they be in doing that between the NFL draft and obviously free agency which does precede that. Another potential cut candidate, but this is only if the 49ers upgrade at center. If they sign Tyler Linderbaum, the free agent with Baltimore, if he joins the 49ers, well, that would be a lot like when Weston Richburg signed in 2018. And then for a couple days, they had Daniel Kilgore, the ex-center on their staff or on their roster. But then they traded Daniel Kilgore, I believe, to the Miami Dolphins. And it's a trade that made a whole heck of a lot of sense because Weston Richburg took his job. If they sign Tyler Linderbaum, then you'll probably see them move on from Jake Brendel. It wouldn't shock me if they signed somebody like Tyler Linderbaum because Kyle Shanahan has forked over big money for the center position in the past for Weston Richburg, who unfortunately couldn't stay healthy, but that was back in 2018. So Brendel, only a cut or trade candidate if the 49ers sign an upgrade at that center position. And then Mike, he said, hey, is D Winters a trade candidate? And I don't think so, but I will be watching the linebacker position with great interest over the course of this offseason because of what Raheem Morris has run in the past. And it's been a wide variety of different defenses. But if he is going to be running a lot of penny fronts, he's going to be running a lot of 3-3-5 and then 5-1 fronts under the penny front, which brings in an extra defensive lineman and then puts a lot of emphasis on the nickel backs. They love Upton Stout and on the safety position. There really might be a de-emphasis on linebacker. And a 5-1, by definition, you only need one linebacker. If you're running 5-man front, one linebacker, there's a lot of pressure on Fred Warner. But if the 49ers have been underwhelmed by the rest of their linebackers, if they've been underwhelmed by D Winters, if they've, last year, Luke Gifford was taken one of those linebacker spots. Curtis Robinson was in another one of those spots. Tatum Bethune, obviously, before he suffered the injury that ended his season. They were in a spot over the last couple of years where they really had to have good linebacker play to have a chance as a defense because the scheme gravitated around three good linebackers, and that's why it was such a gut punch when they couldn't get Eric Kendricks in 2024, and instead they got Devondre Campbell, and then he quit on the football team, and that's why it was such a boost when Eric Kendricks came in and gave the 49ers such good football toward the end of the season. That was a linebacker-dependent defense. Now that you've moved on from Robert Saleh and you have Raheem Morris, who's run some of this penny front stuff in Atlanta, maybe you see the 49ers start to gravitate more toward that DB emphasis. Maybe they don't need as many bodies at linebacker. And maybe somebody like D Winters is a little bit more expendable than he was before. Now, that's all down the road speculation from me. But I think that it's absolutely worth starting to put out some of these data points. Where exactly is Raheem Morris going to want the 49ers to focus their fire? And it's somebody like D Winters also on a rookie contract for the 49ers. It would not be hard to make a move, and it's a move they don't have to make until closer to the regular season. So what we're going to be seeing here over the course of the next few months is Raheem Morris feeling out what he has with the 49ers. The 49ers feeling out what they have on the draft market, what might be available on the free agent market, determining exactly what they're going to run with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa at the middle of this defense. And I'll say that Upton Stout will be definitely a central piece of what the 49ers do. Atlanta ran the second most blitzes in the entire NFL last year. Upton Stout had the most pressures of any defensive back or any cornerback in the NFL last year as a rookie. So obviously they're going to use him aggressively. I think they're going to love the 5-1 whenever they do use it with Upton Stout as the nickel back, somebody that could be going after the quarterback or also working in coverage. The opportunities for San Francisco this year are more diverse probably than ever before, because it doesn't seem to me that they would have hired Raheem Morris and told him what they told Steve Wilks in 2023, and that is assimilate to our scheme or else. That was back when they were coming off the year as the number one defense in 2022. Now the 49ers don't have any such luxury of success the year prior. They were a defense ranked in the 20s after all those injuries. Now is a really good opportunity for them to seriously overhaul some things. And that's why you bring Raheem Morris in as your defensive coordinator. If you didn't want an overhaul, you would have just hired Gus Bradley. That was the easy internal hire. But I really do think that Kyle Shanahan is going to be looking at this from a deeper level and a level of more possibilities schematically. And that's why we just went through that potential cut list. Ji'Ayir Brown, Luke Farrell, Brandon Aiyuk, Bryce Huff, Jake Brendel, D. Winters. I mean, it all comes full circle back to Huff. Salah guy. Will he be a Morris guy? Will he be a Morris guy at 17 million, 17 to 18 million? That last possibility is not likely. Will he be a Morris guy at 8 to 10 million? Maybe so. We'll see how the 49ers decide to shake up and devise this roster. It's going to be so exciting moving forward. Again, Mayor with interview with San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie is up on the channel. We talk a lot of good stuff. I want you guys to go check that out. It is up. It is ready for you on the YouTube channel. Coming off the Super Bowl week, you know, this was really cool. In that interview with the mayor, he asked me, is there a sandwich spot that I need to hit that I haven't yet hit? And I said, well, you've hit Deli Board. They went viral last week after Barstool decided to go there after our video. You've hit M-Stop, which is awesome over in Balboa Park. Have you hit La Sandwich yet in North Beach with Elias over in North Beach? And he said, no, I'm going to go there today. So about 2 hours later, I get texts from Elias at La Sandwich and from Daniel Lurie, who's the mayor of San Francisco. From Daniel Lurie, that was a good sandwich. And then Elias said, you know, the mayor just pulled up. The mayor's, you know, SUV just pulled up with a security guy, and they walked in and they got a sandwich. Anyway, that has been the goal of this channel, is to not only cover football, but to promote community, to help out the small business owners here in San Francisco. And the city went through some very admittedly tough times in the early 2020s, the early part of this decade. But today was such a fulfilling day because I'm literally sitting in San Francisco City Hall with the mayor. He's asking me for sandwich recommendations. And then 2 hours later, his SUV pulls up to the spot that I recommended. And it was Elias. It was part of our big sandwich video. And it was like a really cool full circle thing. Mike says that we have some super chats that I need to take care of before we head off into the night. Super chats, I guess people celebrating the 100,000. That'd be really cool if you guys were. Did I hear that there are rumors that the 49ers against the Rams in Australia will be played on Wednesday and Thursday, so they have more time to rest? Yeah, I believe those. I think that would be smart of the NFL. It is a 15 to 16-hour flight. I hope that it would be the Wednesday game, the earlier one. The Seahawks can wait. They can play on Thursday. That's when the defending world champions normally open their season. So why not put the 49ers and the Rams the day before so they have at least a mini bye coming back from Australia? You know, the cool thing is if they flew out after the game in Australia, the 49ers would, like, you go back in time when you fly back because you cross the date line. You basically land 2 hours before you took off. So they could theoretically be back on Wednesday night if they took off on Wednesday night after a Wednesday day game in Australia, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe it wouldn't be played until Thursday because of the time change. That it all hurts my head. We can run through the different permutations over the course of the next few weeks before that actually is announced. Could the 49ers package AIyuk in a trade? I don't think so, because I don't think anybody wants that contract. And the contract is bloated. It wasn't bloated if he had been in the building and it was playing and it was a good receiver, but considering the fact that Brandon AIyuk is not in the building and is obviously a very unreliable commodity, I don't think anybody wants to pick up a contract that's going to feature a $25 million trigger coming up toward the fall. Any updates on when the 49ers re-signed their kicker, Eddie Pinheiro? It could happen at any point now. Maybe they could try to get that done before free agency. Should the 49ers sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson? I mean, ask Raheem Morris. That's a better question for Raheem. It'd be kind of funny. It'd be full circle. That was the guy who was trying to taunt the crowd. He's been public enemy number one. He was trying to taunt the 49ers crowd when he was at the Lions at halftime when they were up 24-7. Didn't end up too good for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. All right, 100,000. We've made it. Everybody go check out the interview with the mayor. I'm off to get a good burger at Sam's. Speaking of supporting the community, go try to do that right now. Thanks to everyone. We will talk to you very soon.